You lived in the UK. What kind of misconceptions British people have, and Americans probably share as well, about Gambia and about Africa that you wish you could shake out of them?
There are often two conceptions. You have the people on very broad stereotypes, but that think that it's all poverty, and everyone kind of lives in huts or swings in trees, and there isn't much development, etc. And then you have the other side that's like, oh, like sun, sea, and find yourself a nice young person, but that is definitely not the reality. I mean, obviously it's true of a small group, but that's not necessarily the everyone's reality. People here doing very well in their businesses. There are people who don't necessarily need to leave the country to do well in business. They do well in business just with the economy as is. And there are wealthy people, there are poor people, the same way there's a rich poor gap in America, in England, and everywhere else around the world. But I think that in Africa it's just highlighted. And the poverty is just kind of zoomed in on. But then no one ever talks about the wealth and the people who are living very, very comfortably in Africa. And there are a lot of people like that.
That's the best way they can help Africa.
I think the best way would be not just to give aid. I mean, there are very few situations where giving aid works. But for the most part, if you give someone the tools that they need to actually better themselves, then they won't need to come back to you again. But if I just kind of give you a handout or give you some food, then you're going to come back because you're hungry again. But ultimately, if I can train you up to run your own business, be it how small or big, then you can kind of empower other people to kind of continue the cycle and therefore lift yourself out of poverty, as opposed to kind of wait for handout.
So think of the long term, that kind of stuff. Are there any particular products that they ought to look for, buy services from Africa?
In terms of allowing to export, that would be good. In terms of I think for things like mangoes, Gambia actually does export mangoes. If they were to look at other products on a larger scale and maybe be a bit more liberal, probably with the standards. I mean, it's not killing the people that live here, so they should be there. So it should be fine. It's more the standards are what's blocking.
What standards?
The standards, the quality standard, the quality that's required of the European and American markets is what's blocking a lot of Africans from exporting.
Give me an example of a standard.
Like honey, for example. Like the water content in honey needs to be at this percentage, and the clarity needs to be at this, and they all need to look exactly the same. But even the honey that we have here in the smaller jars are not exactly the same quality.
Oh, even
they're not exactly the same color, and often even like what I thought, or you've got like darker ones here, and often like what I thought was that the quality of the honey was associated to the color, but actually, having learned about it now, it actually has nothing to do with it. But when you go to a European supermarket, all the honey in one section will be the exact same shade. And so because of standards like that they're often very difficult to meet over here, it's difficult to export.
Excellent.